Hey Emma,
Yes, Madelyn.
what would you say if somebody asked you to throw a tin of shaving cream in the face of a stranger?
I don't know. What would I say?
Pyre? I barely know her. Hello, and welcome to Talk This.
It's dangerous to podcast alone.
That was a throwback right there.
Yeah.
I got a chuckle. This makes it like the top 33%.
You got a
of Talk This
despairing
jokes.
chuckle. That still
Oof.
puts it in the upper echelons, though.
Oof.
Echelons?
Yeah, echelons.
Okay.
I'm sorry that you're in despair. You'll keel over in 3 turns.
Yeah.
Persona 5 lesson of the week. Champ dies of sadness.
Pretty accurate, honestly.
Anyway, I'm your host, one of your hosts, Madelyn.
I'm your other host, Emma.
And we're here for one of our full episodes. I feel like it's been, even though it's of course only been the standard 2 weeks, it feels like a very long time since we recorded a full episode.
You're kinda, yeah. It's true. Last time we did Prince of Persia and Edith Finch.
And this time, we'll be talking about EarthBound and Pyre, as you might have gotten from my introductory hilarious joke.
Yes.
I've got a lot of pie on the mind lately. Fun fact for our listeners, did you know that pie fights are strictly prohibited in New York City public parks?
I didn't.
I didn't either until we tried to put in a permit and got a very stern call.
Until Madelyn got arrested for throwing
Threatened
pies.
with legal action if there was so much as a drop of shaving cream. Anyway, that's the game Pyre is not actually about pie or being pied. So that's just your little off-topic corner fun fact of the week.
And since we usually start with our old game, we're actually starting with EarthBound first, before we get carried away with the pie puns.
Absolutely. So I'll save my pie puns for later, and try to transition into my Mother Earth. I don't know, persona. I didn't mean persona, yeah.
So, EarthBound is the Western title of Mother 2, which is part of the Mother series. And I could not figure out why it's called Mother.
I didn't attempt to.
I mean, I know some things about EarthBound, but I knew it was called Mother, and that always struck me as odd. I was couldn't understand the logic behind the title. And doing research, I still don't understand. So if I'm missing something obvious or not so obvious, please let me know. Because it's a confounding title, and I understand why they changed it for the Western release.
It's just meant to confuse, like most of the game. It's because your mom, kills the bee thing.
Oh.
Probably.
Yeah.
It's Mother.
Yeah, that's the way you're supposed to read the title. Mother 2.
So yeah, it was, in the English version, it's called EarthBound, so as not to confuse people, as Mother 1 wasn't released in the West until, 2015. So, EarthBound, as we're gonna call it, the 1994 Super Nintendo Entertainment System, Japanese RPG, SNES RPG. We want to go all acronym-y on it.
Yeah.
And it's sort of a cult classic.
Yeah.
It was not super well reviewed when it came out at all.
Yeah.
Also just very weirdly marketed, which we'll talk about. Really weird. And just really weird in general. So, but in this game, you play as Ness, which now that I hear is that a play on SNES? Is that how they named it?
I don't think so. The first Mother was also released on the NES, and the main character is not Ness, so...
Yeah, but in this case, it's actually a literal, an anagram. It was just the Nintendo Entertainment System. You're just, pronouncing the acronym. It's NES. But for this one, you're moving the S to the end. Anyway, Ness is mostly best well-known as being one of our real stalwart Super Smash Bros. Characters.
Mm-hmm.
One of those ones who, comes from games and you're I don't know what this is from. Speaking of... Wah! Just a reminder. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go back and listen to our last full episode, I think.
Last,
Side quests? Two
full
side
episode,
quests to go.
full episode.
Yeah, our last full episode, and you should understand my wah. You probably understand anyway. Anyway, you play as Ness. You're this kid, and you travel with, eventually, your 4-person, gang, to collect, this is weird, folks, 8 melodies, in, like, your song stone, I think it's called, to defeat this, like, evil alien force called Gygas, which has, like, turned the world into this, like, hate-fueled, kind of messed up, like, it's transformed people into, like, vomit creatures and stuff. And yeah, so it's, like, RPG in that way, kind of classic Japanese RPG.
At the time, it was also a not very traditional RPG, since it was set in the real world, or approximate real world, and also had more to do with, like, friendship power, for lack of a better phrase, rather than, like, murder through weapons.
That's true. And the mechanics of it are also pretty streamlined. You don't have, like, 20 different things you're leveling up, and, like, different arcana, like, different, like, magic points, and also, like, esper points, and, like all these weird things. It's very, very streamlined, so as to focus more on the story, and just the general weirdness. I mean, your friend's name is Pokey, Paula, Jeff, all reasonably normal so far, and Pooh.
Hey, that's a normal name.
P-O-O.
Winnie the.
That's got an H at the end. Literally Pooh. So if you think your childhood was tough, say a prayer for poor Pooh out there dealing with some tough stuff.
Yeah.
As you might expect from a game that's about literally collecting melodies to stop malicious aliens from, like, destroying the world, it also features a kind of bizarre, eclectic score with everything from, like, cha-cha and salsa to trap music. With
great influence from the Beach Boys.
The Beach Boys and their trap music?
Yeah.
Who knew that the Beach Boys were so trappy?
No, I just mean that a lot of the soundtrack was a big inspiration with the Beach Boys.
For a moment, the way you said that, I thought that the soundtrack inspired the Beach Boys.
No, the Beach Boys inspired the soundtrack.
Well, that's cool. Yeah, and the whole game was kind of really goofy on purpose. They were kind of trying to poke fun at some of these RPG tropes. Like I said, you literally battle piles of vomit and walking nooses and just, like, nutso stuff.
Yeah.
So it's this really weird game that has an extreme cult following. Certainly, like I said, did not get reviewed very well when it came out originally, but kind of developed this, like, real, like, fan base, and was eventually kind of brought back only in the past couple of years.
Yeah. Yeah, they re-released both the original Mother and EarthBound, I think, for the Wii U Virtual Console.
Yeah, something like that. And the 3DS, I think.
Yeah. And still, Mother fans wait in vain for the official localization of Mother 3, which will never come.
Never, ever. The game itself almost didn't get made because it was so weird. The writer-director is Shigetsuto Itoi, who I thought his most notable other credit is that he's the voice of the father in My Neighbor Totoro. But it kind of got saved when they brought on as the programmer Satoru Iwata, whose future held the Nintendo presidency.
Yeah.
So that kind of, bolstered the game enough to get released. It sold okay in Japan, but did not sell very well in the US.
Yeah, like half as many copies.
Yeah. Although I thought it was interesting reading about the localization and how they had to kind of, like, translate the puns into English.
Yeah, I find that, if you've listened to this podcast at all, I find localization processes really fascinating, and the ways you translate it. But sort of like the Phoenix Wright series, there's a whole lot of puns and humor that works with the Japanese language that you then have to find sort of equivalents for in the English language, along with like cultural references and all that stuff. Plus, there's also the censorship when bringing a lot of Japanese games over to the US, which EarthBound got a little bit of. One in that there's like a part where Ness walks around naked, that he's now in his pajamas, and the cultists that show up look a little bit less like the KKK in the Western version. I also had to remove references, apparently, to intellectual property, religion, and alcohol from the American release.
Sure, Coca-Cola had to go.
Yeah.
I love the the parents don't have a lot that they do in this game, but I think it's really funny, especially when you compare it to like your Pokemon parents, which like do nothing for you. Like, where is your dad?
Your dad's dead.
Well, we don't really know that, do we?
Might as well be. The real dark backstory of the Pokemon protagonist.
Seriously. But yeah, so the way this story kind of kicks off is there's this meteorite crash. When you go investigate with your neighbor Pokey, because his brother Picky has like kind of disappeared in this crash, I think. And then a bee from the future, right? Of course. Yeah. Because what else would it be? Tells you to like collect these melodies in the sound stone and stop the force. And it's probably going to tell you more about how to do so until your mom thinks it's a pest and kills it.
Yeah.
And that's funny enough as it is, but I think the purpose of the dad is even funnier.
Yeah.
Every time you win a battle, he deposits the money for you.
You can also save your game through him.
Yeah, I know, but I just love that it's like you're out there battling and your dad's like, good job, kids, like, give you a little extra. Like, you're doing good. Grab a generic cola.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just thought that the way they use the parents in this, it's like, what? Speaking of, what? The marketing campaign for this game.
I think it was just a little bit before its time.
Freaking nutso. So it's $2 million campaigns. This is not like they're trying to skimp on money. It's an expensive campaign.
Yeah.
With the kind of tagline, quote, "This game stinks." So you'd think, like, that's funny enough, like, oh, they're saying the game is bad, haha. But you know how they did that? With literal scratch and sniff stickers in Nintendo Power.
Mm-hmm.
That smelled like poop. Or vomit. And stuff. I don't know.
I don't know if that could have ever worked, but I do think that "this game stinks" tagline was just before its time.
No, that's fair, but doing the literal stinks was a step too far.
Yeah. Somebody thought it was a really great idea in theory, and then they did not get any consumer data on it and just did it.
It's similar to the way I thought about marketing this podcast stinks at Games for Change that past weekend, this weekend that's already happened.
Yeah.
Now, wink wink. With smelly things.
Smelly t-shirts.
Smelly t-shirts. This podcast stinks. We've been wearing these shirts for 3 days. But we didn't. Womp womp. No, but there's a great article where I was like reading about these smells on Kotaku about these like two brothers who played the game as kids and like talking about it and what they remember about it. So I might link to that on the page this week. Something else about this game that I'm always kind of like weirdly fascinated by when games do this, because I just think it's funny, is the piracy protection that it has. You read about this?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's all sorts of stuff throughout the game, like sort of the standard thing, and this is not that unusual in games, is, you know, they have the kind of like, when it detects that you're playing a pirated copy, which I sort of don't understand. Like, I get that it's like, it has more memory or something, like there's something different about the code, but I don't really understand why that happens when you pirate it.
I couldn't tell you.
I don't expect you to explain it to me.
I imagine there's something in the code that activates when it's like, you know, ripped off a disk or something.
Sure. That's our technological explanation for the day.
Not that the NES or the SNES used discs, but you know what I mean.
The cartridge.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you get, like, the scary warning at the front of the game of, like, piracy is illegal. Which, like, that would be enough to freak me out from playing the game.
Mm-hmm.
That would scare me away, right away, to buy the game.
Mm-hmm.
But throughout the game, if you're playing a pirated copy, you see much greater rates of enemy spawns, so the idea is, like, just to make the game really tedious and difficult for you. And then comes to the truly delicious part.
Delicious.
So, there's, like, a final boss battle, right? It's a game. It's an RPG. There's gonna be a final boss battle. There's gotta be. And so you get to kind of this final boss battle, and you're, like, talking. I guess I won't spoil it, because, like, I'm not 100% sure I would spoil it correctly. Even though I watched the video of it happening. So you're talking with this sort of, like, battle before the really final boss, and you fight the first part of it, and you're going forward, and, your game freezes. Oh, man. Silly SNES. Like, that sucks. Guess I'm gonna have to go back and fight this part again. I'll restart my system. Restart the game, see the Nintendo logo, see all the logos, go to load your game. The save data has been purged. There's nothing left.
Mm-hmm.
It's all been wiped away. Brutal!
That is pretty brutal.
Fatality! Yeah, so it's like really kind of notorious for that piracy protection thing. 'Cause, like, man, how horrible.
Yep.
Like, how cruel.
That's what you get for being a pirate.
I know. And, like, I was reading all these other articles about piracy and how people, like, are revealing themselves as being pirates by, like, complaining about things that are complaining about stuff online. I think that's really funny. Yeah. Or, like, Game Dev Tycoon. This was the funniest one that I read about. Which was like, it said, Tycoon, you're pretending to be a game developer. And if you're playing on a pirated version, eventually, like, pirates will exponentially increase until you're unable to make money on your game because there are so many pirates. Which I thought was just also pretty delicious.
Mm-hmm.
So the people could come up, like, whoever the guy is in the companies that, like, comes up with the piracy protection must have a pretty fun job.
Probably, yeah.
I mean, sort of. Granted, not as fun as, like, writing the game, but still, must be nice to get assigned that because you just get to, like, be a jerk.
Yeah.
Not a jerk. Be a crusader for artists and intellectual property rights. I support that.
Sure, but you assign it to the guy who's the jerkiest in your office.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. Yeah. I thought about talking, I don't know if you have thoughts about this, about how this game, it's technically a sequel?
Yes, but they all stand by themselves.
It's so interesting then. Like, why would you call it Mother 2?
It's set in the same world.
I know. But calling it, like, doing it, it's one thing to be like, Mother, Secrets of the Gygus. So
sure.
You give it, like, a subtitle.
It's just, for recognition's sake, it's a lot easier, especially if your first game did well enough, that then you're like, the fans will look at it and be like, oh, it's the same thing. They don't have to look up that it's the same developer or the same team or the same style, right? They just know from the fact that it's part of that same series.
No, I get that.
And as people, people trying to go to Kingdom Hearts 3 from Kingdom Hearts 2 realize naming it different with things with subtitles makes a lot of people dismiss it as just, like, a side game. It's like, oh, I don't need to play this. There's nothing important here. It's something they're doing in their spare time, So, like, when you give a game a subtitle as opposed to just a number, it makes it seem less official.
That's true once you introduce the numbers. I think if Kingdom Hearts, for example, had never introduced numbers to begin with and just done, like, subtitles, that would have been... Well, it still would have been a problem because they're being released on these, like, BS, like, PSPs. But, like, it would have been less of a problem, I think. I think once you introduce numbers, it starts to feel... Well, I just think sequels in video games are interesting. And we talked about this sort of in reference, I believe, to Infinity War in one of our first Side Quest 4.0s, I think, if my memory isn't deceiving me. Right? Didn't you talk about that? Oh. So I think we talked about it in one of those first side quests in this new format. And, like, in movies, a lot of the time, I think... Well, less and less so, but I think in movies, frequently, like, we're okay with, like, you have to have watched the previous movies to understand it. I mean, Infinity War was a little bit of a different case, and I think falls along more of kind of the video game path of what happens a lot of the time. In Infinity War, everyone was like, I should be able to understand it. It's a superhero movie.
Mm-hmm.
But in, like, kind of, like, high art kind of things, not high art, exactly, but respected, like, the Lord of the Rings, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Not that you sort of can't. I feel like you could probably jump in anywhere in Lord of the Rings and you'd probably be fine. But, like, we get that you have to watch those in order. Or Harry Potter, like, you're probably going to understand it more if you watch it in order.
Mm-hmm.
Or in better example, in books, like, no one would expect you to be able to pick up, like, the third book in a series.
Yeah.
And understand what was going on. Whereas with video games, I think more than anything else, you sort of get denigrated if you're creating something that, like, has to be sequential.
Yeah. No, for sure. I mean, this is totally off topic from EarthBound, but there's always, like people who complain about Square Enix, like, re-releasing their games on different systems. I'm like, well, what do you want them to do? Like, they're doing this so that more people can experience the games, right? So, what are you complaining about, exactly? Just like, they want your money? Well, of course they want your money. They're a company. But they also want people to be able to play Kingdom Hearts 3 and enjoy it and understand it completely. Hence why they're releasing everything on the PlayStation 4. You don't have to buy it if you don't want it. Right?
Yeah, I know. It just feels a little... Like, it feels gross.
But
why?
I
know it's a good... Because if you don't think about it, if you're someone who's not understanding video games and how difficult it is to... Like, how backwards compatibility isn't really a thing... then it feels like it, and it is, right, on some level, but it feels even more like a cash grab. Like, it's nothing but a cash grab.
Sure.
Whereas I agree with you, now anyway, I probably would not have felt so charitably, at least a few years ago. But I just don't think people understand how difficult it is to play a game that's a system back, or God forbid, 2 systems back.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, if it's not on the store, you just can't do it. And we talk about this a lot on the podcast, so I won't beat a dead horse. But to the uninitiated, or even the sort of initiated, it certainly feels a lot more cynical. And let's be real, it's probably 75% cynicism, 25% like, people should be able to experience our art. But I think that even that 25% doesn't really get acknowledged.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anyway, sequels in video games, maybe a topic for a side quest to discuss at some point.
Yeah.
Because I think it's interesting, and I really think it gets kind of pushed aside, mostly because people don't take video games seriously as an art form that can tell stories.
Yeah.
So.
Not that we're saying that Kingdom Hearts is, like, the Odyssey or something, but...
It's not.
Yeah. Yeah.
Clickbait Boyfriend just finished, Ventus's storyline in Birth by Sleep, and he's real confused. So.
But having strayed way off the topic of EarthBound, we should probably move on to Pyre.
Pyre. I love that we kind of picked, I know they're not really similar, but we picked these, like, RPGs this week.
I wouldn't call Pyre an RPG.
You know what? Supergiant calls it an RPG, so you would be wrong.
Okay. Feels like a weird thing to call it, though. Always, like, in RPGs, I expect there to be some sort of, like, you know, progression system. You level up your character or whatever. And I don't think you don't do that in Pyre.
You can kind of get better equipment and that sort of thing.
But it's not specifically for your characters. Your character's like the coach.
Sure. It's like, if you really beefed up manager mode from FIFA, and instead of it being FIFA, this is a good one to talk about right now because it's like sporty and it's the World Cup. But instead of it being FIFA, it's like Ultimate Frisbee Manager.
Mm-hmm.
It would be sort of like that, except with feelings.
Supergiant Games is one of my favorite indie developers. And I've only played a little bit of Pyre because I got it on my computer, which was a mistake. I should have gotten it on the PlayStation. So it doesn't run very well on my computer, which makes parts of it hard. But essentially, you play as a character who has been exiled from society, and you join up with other exiles, and upon realizing that you're literate, you're able to guide these exiles through their travels. And as part of being an exile, you play like this game of the rights, which you have like a field, and it's 3 exiles against your opponents, and you try to get the ball to the pyre. You destroy the other pyre by launching balls at it. Kind of. Does that make sense?
No, it makes sense to me because I have read about the game. So hopefully it makes sense to our readers, our listeners as well. I was thinking about readers because your character is called the Reader. And I just want to emphasize that you have been exiled because you know how to read.
Yes. That's not the only reason people get exiled, however.
Yes, but it's your reason.
Yeah.
Anyway, just like quick plug for Pyre. Steam Summer Sale's going on, y'all. I mean, Emma just gave a really glowing review of the computer version.
I can run Transitor and Bastion on my, which is their other 2 games, on my Surface, but Pyre is just a little bit too many moving parts at once for my Surface to be able to handle.
Well, it's 60% off until July 5th. It's less than $10. I might buy it, although who knows if my MacBook Air...
There is a Mac version.
There is a Mac version, though. I was very pleased to see that. So we might try to run it. You know, I'm going to be separated from my my consoles this week. So Champ McDude's just going to have to take a few days off. And so I might need some new computer games.
Yeah. It's also got a local cooperative mode.
Yeah, and in their FAQ, they're like, we're never doing an online mode. Like, it's too hard. It wouldn't be good. It's only gotta be local. And I was like, yes. No co-op, though. Frowning face.
I think mostly it's that they have no experience with multiplayer online, and so they were like, we don't really want to learn.
There's literally 12 of them.
Plus that requires maintenance too to have like online multiplayer mode, I think. So yeah, that's probably not something they wanted to chew off.
What?
Chew off. Tear off.
Bite off.
Shoulder.
They thought they would bite off more than they could
bite
chew.
off. There you go. That's the one.
Another
but anyway,
thing I thought
it's sort of half visual novel, half adventure game, and then half action sports game.
I always loved being the manager in FIFA, so I think I would dig it. So I might get it. Tell me if I shouldn't, people, but just kidding. I probably already got. It's like probably too late. I've probably already gotten it. LOL. It also has like a huge soundtrack. I thought that was a kind of a funny point of overlap in these games. It also has this kind of like 2-hour soundtrack that you can buy.
Supergiant Games has great soundtracks.
Well, that's definitely going to have to be an element of the mashup, which we'll get to soon. I also liked, and I wanted to talk to you about this in light of, has the YouTube come out?
The YouTube has come out.
In light of the YouTube video that Emma posted on this Thursday about choice-based games, I thought that this would be an interesting game to discuss, and I wanted your thoughts on the branching narrative in Pyre.
I really like. I mean, I have only played a little bit of Pyre, so I haven't experienced much of the branching narrative for myself. But I really like the idea of having like whether you win or lose a match impacts your narrative. So like having that gameplay actually have an impact on the story as a rather than just like making decisions. Although there's decision parts of it as well. But tying that sports gameplay into like the journey of the characters, I thought is a very cool idea.
Yeah, I thought this was well handled because it's not just these kind of, like you were saying, these arbitrary choices that you're making. And especially, like, I'm thinking of all these choice-based games, and even of, like, friggin' Persona sometimes. It's like, I say something, and I interpret it one way, and then it's not, like, evidently that's not how I was meant to interpret it. And I'm like, wait, hold on, that's not what I meant. Like, help, I don't feel in control here. Whereas if it's all based on kind of, like, your play, I like that it ties in more active gameplay to these kind of branching narratives, as opposed to just kind of, like, conversations that you have.
Yeah. I don't think enough games, like, in searching for non-violent gameplay, which is hard, it can be hard, I feel like games have not utilized sports as much as they could have, right? Like, especially depending on how serious you are about sports and depending on how young you are, there's a whole lot of, like, emotional pathos that you can find in... Emotional pathos is pretty redundant. Pathos you can find in sports. And a lot of intensity also in the competition of it. But really the only sports games you get are like the FIFA ones, where even if there is a manager mode, that doesn't really like let you into the minds of the characters. You know, it's more of either like you're making your best team or just you're playing with your friends. So I feel like a lot of narrative games have not plumbed the depths of sports as a possibility for making non-violent gameplay.
But Emma, you're forgetting something.
What am I forgetting?
Video games are for nerds.
But isn't that enacting your fantasy then?
No, nerds hate sports ball.
Being this cool jock?
But then doesn't it hurt that much more when you lose?
But I guess you have a point, right? Like, games come out based on who's making them, right? So, it's probably changing now as more and more companies are made and more people enter games and it becomes more mainstream. But you're right. A lot of game makers were probably, I'm making a generalization here, but we're probably not huge sports people. So you don't see a lot of sports. Nerds. That's why you see a lot of dads now, because there's a lot of dads making games now. It's true.
It's just funny, though.
Like God of War, the new one's made by the same guy who made the first two. But he's a dad now. And you can see that in the game.
Boy?
Yeah.
Do you think that's how he talks to his child?
I think he might have a daughter. I'm not sure.
That's fine. Boy is the gender neutral. Happy Pride. I've made boy gender neutral for you all. It's the gift of Talk This.
I don't think that's how it works, but okay.
It's done. It's been podcasted.
But I mean, especially the way Pyre uses it and the way it changes the narrative. Like, there's a lot of potential for that. Like,
yeah, there's a fascinating piece on Wired about this and how, like, this game is about why we play and the stakes behind it and that kind of thing, that I'll also share this week if I remember to schedule it. But definitely, I mean, certainly using some other type of game to explore games within a game. Who doesn't love that kind of meta exploration?
Game.
Gaming and game. Gamer girls. Hashtag.
But also, speaking of the Pyre soundtrack, there's like one track that changes based on your character's gender. So they actually made 3 in case you're a boy or a girl or neither.
Well, that's nice.
Yeah. For a while they were like, if we have this song, maybe we can't include this option. But I think they ended up going with it and making another version. Which is cool.
Yeah, good for them. I also I was reading their Let's Play policy, and they were like, it's fine, monetize it. I'm like, whatever. Let us know if you're doing something that isn't just gameplay. Which I think is great.
Yeah. Speaking of piracy, there's a lot of fear right now that, like, Let's Plays and streams are the new piracy, right? That people won't buy games because they'll just watch them, which I think is not right. Not a correct assumption. So it's always nice when game developers are chill about it.
It's I think it would be more worrisome, like, to throw it back, for example, to last week's new game. I always want to say, what's eating Edith Finch?
What remains of? What's eating her?
It's not that. It's like, it might be a problem if you're a developer creating games like, I literally almost said it again, What Remains of Edith Finch, where it is, it does fall more on that kind of, whatever this means, visual novel side of the scale. Like, if I was them, I'd be a little bit more concerned, because, especially since the game is like 2 hours long, right? Like, you could watch it all, and if you're me, for example, you might watch it all and be like, great, I don't have to buy it.
Sure.
But I mean, like you said, like, literally, and y'all listening to the podcast can't hear this, of course, but when you were saying that, I was just like, I'm, like, literally rolling my eyes. Like, if you're saying that Let's Plays are the new piracy, you fully don't understand what a video game is.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, for me, I watch Let's Plays either for games I wouldn't buy, but I'm sort of interested in from an academic standpoint, like Detroit, or from games I've already played, because I want to see what people think of certain moments in the game. So neither of those stops me from buying the game. And in fact, maybe the first one draws my interest in the first hour and I stop and buy it. That's how I feel like
so little of watching Let's Plays is really about, like, let me watch this whole game.
Yeah.
It's about, who's the personality doing the Let's Play, or what's their gimmick of doing this, or, like, it's a whole different entertainment. Like, it's going to a Rocky Horror show.
Yeah.
Like a Shadowcast. It's like, yeah, like, you like Rocky Horror, but you're sort of going for the whole experience.
Yeah.
And it's just dumb. Like, again, like, the only people that I think should really be worried about this are, like, the kind of much more visual novel-y creators. And even then, it's just not the same experience to watch somebody else play it.
Yeah. Speaking of watching people play at making games.
That was horrible.
I could not think of a single thing.
Nothing, like, that went up in flames. Like, we need a funeral pyre for that transition. Yeah, so our mashup. Okay. So we have these two games. I know that Pyre isn't really an RPG, but they have kind of this, like, party structure that is generally traditional to an RPG.
Sure.
They've got cool soundtracks, both of them. You're kind of in this weird dystopian world in both of them.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of commonality there, but let's see. In EarthBound, there's vomit, talking vomit, and scratch and sniff stickers,
mm-hmm.
and a dad who gives you money.
Mm-hmm.
And in Pyre, there's high stakes, like, lacrosse.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we mash those two together?
Okay. So,
this is gonna
aliens
be good.
have descended to the Earth, and the only way they know how to communicate is through lacrosse.
Let's not make it lacrosse. I don't want it to be lacrosse.
Is through basketball. It's more like basketball.
Yeah, I just said lacrosse because it was
through
a fun
high
word.
stakes basketball. And so, in every like negotiation, you have to try to communicate your position through basketball.
So like the way you play like gives like an emotional
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. Like you playing defensively, you're like, nah man, like would rather you not do that. Or you playing it offensively, like, nah man, I'm gonna freaking crush you if you do that. You know? Or maybe you're showing cooperation through passing a lot and they're like, oh, you want to work together.
This is very weird. I kind of like it. This like you're doing this elaborate like sport dance. like a butterfly, like a mating ritual.
Yeah.
Like
that's it. That's it.
That's very interesting. I'm intrigued by this game. I'm not sure I might just watch the Let's Play though. Like, not sure I'm gonna buy this game. Seems like it might be kind of frustrating. But interesting, you know? I'll nominate it for some gameplay awards.
Okay, what's your idea, huh?
Okay. So, we're gonna lean a little bit more into the sports manager thing.
Okay.
But it's gonna be like a K-drama.
Okay.
Wherein not only are you the manager, but you are like the relationship manager.
Okay.
So now it's the IT crowd of the sporting team. And so you're playing intergalactic sports, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's now the year 5000.
Mm-hmm.
And sort of in a similar idea of yours, like it's like not like the Hunger Games, but like important things ride on who wins the Galaxy Cup.
Mm-hmm.
Like resources and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So that's important and affects your options moving forward, but you also have to kind of manage like the relationships on your team. Like, oh no, it's the year 5000, so hopefully this isn't a big deal anymore, but like one of your players came out as gay. Like,
yeah, hopefully we're chill about that in 3,000 years. That's a good goal to shoot for.
Fine. One of your players says something really speciesist.
Okay.
Like a species slur. And like, how are we going to deal with this? Are we going to kick this person off? Do we know that they only said that because their mother was eaten by a Blorkian at age 3?
And that's the EarthBound part, the mother being eaten by a Blorkian.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm not seeing a ton of EarthBound in this idea. Not that I don't love it, but
There are aliens.
okay.
What else was I gonna try to make Earthboundy about this? You've got a character named Pooh to make sure he doesn't get teased too much.
Okay.
And there's some brutal copyright protection, wherein you get to the end of the game with your pirated copy, no signs of anything up to that point, and then your system catches on fire.
Your whole system?
Yeah. And we send the aliens in with ray guns.
Okay.
To bring you to the office of our
Okay.
developers, where we throw poo at you in the shape of the character Pooh.
Okay.
And make you smell vomit stickers.
Okay.
How do you feel about that one?
Sounds awesome. Seems like a real winner, and not like we wouldn't get sued at all.
We'd say they're pirates.
I'm
And-
still pretty sure that counts as vigilantism, maybe?
Piracy is illegal.
That's why it's vigilantism.
Not if we don't get caught. Or it's like, maybe your programmer's creating a sports game. I'm just gonna you have to create good, it gets pirated, I don't know. I'm just saying words.
So neither of those were good. Even
I
a
thought
little.
yours was interesting.
Mine is interesting, but would anyone buy it? That's the EarthBound part.
No one buys it.
No one buys it.
It's called Sports 3003. And everyone's like, what about Sports 3001? And nobody buys it.
What?
Like a sequel. Like, it's 3003. But what about 3001 and 3002?
Oh, you're right. That's
I
what I
thought it
say
was
for
funny.
the new Cyberpunk game. 2088. Where's my 2087? God.
Seriously.
It's based on
Oh.
the game, too. It's like Cyberpunk 2020. So where is my Cyberpunk 2021 through 2087? I'm sorry.
I know. I feel
It's
like
so
I'm not
confusing.
going to understand.
I can't consider the game.
Okay, how about this? You're on a sports team. Suddenly, a meteorite hits the Earth. Oh no! You're a sports team, but now you have to save the Earth. Using your sports skills in combat against alien creatures and vomit creatures.
Or you're a sports team and you go into your tournament, right? And everybody's at the tournament. And then a meteor comes down, and the radiation from the meteor gives all the sports teams special powers. And so you have to incorporate those special powers into your sporting.
What are the stakes here?
Bragging rights.
It's like a nitrous oxide kind of situation. Like
They're holding the antidote to the... Like, you get special powers, but your lifespan is also significantly shortened. So they're
like,
holding the
just like playing
antidote
football.
hostage. They're using this tournament as a test of the sportiest sportsters. And only by winning the tournament do you get the antidote to become normal humans again.
Can we get like Space Jam in on this?
Sure.
Is Bugs Bunny there?
Bugs Bunny is also there. Just in the
Yeah.
background.
Great. Perfect. That seems okay. That seems okay.
An excessive use of the word sport.
It'll be called Sporty Sport Sport.
Sporty sport aliens.
The sports game. Nice.
That will be a winner. 10 out of 10
what?
IGN.
Seriously. Best game we've ever played.
Truly, our lives were not complete until we played this game.
And that way we could incorporate your, like, communicating through sports thing into, like, one of the levels.
True. This
I
is
dig it.
truly, truly beautiful.
Alright, well, on that truly beautiful note, folks, this has been another episode of Talk This.
It's dangerous to podcast alone.
We've now got to pick our games for 2 weeks from now.
Yep. And because the hats are a little bit of a mess right now, by which I mean all of the papers are in one hat, and some of them we've already picked, and I don't want to deal with that. We're going to just do the website thing, where Madelyn picks a number, and I tell her what number on the list it is on our homepage.
An integer.
Yes. A positive
Whole
number.
Actually, yeah. Can I go?
You can go. Oldian first.
11.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Your favorite game in the universe, Portal.
Oh!
We can go into Madelyn's irrational hatred for Portal in the next episode.
I'm bad at it. That's all that matters.
Alright. And then we'll do the new game.
Okay. It better be 4.
Abzu.
Great.
So
So
we're talking-
excited.
Next week. I mean, not next week. 2 weeks from now. We will be talking about Portal and Abzu. And Emma will try her darndest to remember both of them this time.
I should do a Let's Play.
A Portal?
Yeah.
What?
Wouldn't that be funny? Wouldn't that be good content?
Sure.
Don't encourage me. I might do it. Ugh. Alright, folks. Well, now that we've ruined my Fortnite, next week we'll be back with our side quest news magazine format. I have some fun ideas for it, so we'll chat after we wrap Emma. But you'll get a side quest episode next week, and you'll certainly hear all about us at the Games for Change conference that we attended this weekend.
Yep.
Spoiler alert, we have thoughts.
Yep. I'm sure we do.
So yeah, tune in. Don't forget to like us on all our social media. Follow whatever it is you do on the social media. And we're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Talk This Podcast. You can see all sorts of content about the Games for Change Festival there now.
Mm-hmm.
And lots of just other fun content. I've promised a couple of read thises, so hopefully that'll come up in the next week.
Mm-hmm.
You should also check out our YouTube channel. We're Talk This Sisters on there. Subscribe. Check out Emma's latest Play This. I forgot which this it was for a moment. Play This about choice-based games.
What makes a choice matter? Play This
Exactly.
number 5.
It's a very cool video. You should check it out if you haven't already, and subscribe and leave us a comment saying how great it is.
Exactly.
Also check out our website, www.talkthispodcast.com, for our split screen off-topic corner series, for Clickbait Boyfriend, for Buzz This, all sorts of blogs, and for information about where you can download the podcast. Speaking of which, just keep on listening. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts / Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, and Spotify.
Yeah.
So wherever your podcasts are sold for free, you should check us out, subscribe, rate, review, all the usual stuff. Are you laughing at me?
Wherever podcasts are sold for free. We are a free podcast, in case you didn't know already.
100% free. All we require is your love.
Uh-huh.
And your support for local co-op gaming.
Yes.
That's all that's required to download the podcast. You just sign up, pledge.
But anyway, that about wraps it up.
Do you want to do the sign-off?
I hope you have a week with your feet firmly on the earth.